yak, lama, 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 yak. Thank you so much. And let's change the name of the school, the Colonists, maybe to Home of the Jaguars or anything else. Thank you.
Austo, I have a question. Can you just give us a real quick overview of what you just did? Can you translate it?
Yes.
What's the subject matter?
Okay, the songs you mean, or
Song.
okay, the first song was for Bigfoot, and there is a story of Bigfoot, lives in the mountains, in the Navajo. Dene is the correct way to say Navajo. That gave me this. He says there is this thing that comes, very hairy, and I feed him. He does not hurt me. I'm like, what's he talking about? So that song talks about Bigfoot, how he hides in the mountains and he's afraid of subhumans.
Okay.
The second was the Yahi Yoho. It's the tribes of California, and it talks about the water. It talks about the stars because we are the star people. If you look into the Tongva or Gabileño or Quiche or Shoshone, they have songs of the dolphins in Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, all the way to Seal Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, and how we're related to the dolphins. And a lot of that has a lot of meaning to us. And out of respect, that's what they taught me, because I am Mexica. I'm a native from Oaxaca. I want him, when he speaks, Jeremy, to talk more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is Jeremy Gonzalez.
My name is Jeremy Gonzalez. I'm the great-great-grandson of Jenny Acuna. She's the last living matriarch of our tribe. I run a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles that helps the homeless. I work with the mayor of Glendora, councilmen in Santa Monica on a number of issues regarding my tribe and the homelessness issue. One thing that I'm here for is the name, the Colonist. That's hurtful to me. You know, right now I'm fighting a mural in Santa Monica. They covered it 2 years ago. It depicts my ancestors kneeling down on our knees, looking up to Spanish soldiers and Father Sarah. My ancestors were displaced. This land was stolen from us. I can trace my ancestry back to the Spanish missions over 5,000 years ago, where we were enslaved. We have the genealogy. There's a lot of people that come in here and claim to be Tongva, claim to be Gabrielino. I'm sure you guys have heard it. But have they showed you something that solidifies that? Their paperwork from the Bureau of Indian Affairs that recognizes them as Gabrielino or Tongva. I have that proof. I also have the proof of my mother's death certificate that says she is Gabrielino and Shoshone. My cousin, Nick Rocha, is the chairman and the chief of the Gabrielino Shoshone. And he just sat down in New York at the United Nations. They wanted to hear our voice. And I think these board members, you should hear my voice. My kids go to school here in Anaheim. My son, Jaden, is a football player at Catella High School. My daughter, Liesel, is on her 8th grade trip right now in New York from South Junior High. And every month I had to save and I had to put away money so she can go on this trip and do without as a father. I suffer from something called Crohn's disease. That's why I'm so thin. I've been dealing with Crohn's disease since I was 35 years old. I also suffer with a rare genetic disease called AIP. And I've had a service animal for the last 11 years because of these conditions. When I go into Cedars-Sinai, my animal comes with me everywhere I go. Out of respect for this meeting, I didn't bring my service dogs in here because I didn't know what the crowd would be. So I wanted to be respectful and I didn't know what the space would be. But with that being said, I'm never going to stop fighting for my ancestry. It's not about me. It's about my children. It's about Jaden. It's about Liesel. It's about the 7 generations that are coming. We always talk about this as indigenous people because we've lost everything. And in my language, I would call him Nipa.
Do it.
Nipa. That means brother. Just like my dog, Washi. That means dog in my language. There's a lot of words from our language that are lost. I'm one of the few people that have written out over 800 words in our dialect. And I work with Chicano educators to teach these things. And I know when we talk about ethnic studies and different things in these type of settings, it gets testy. You know, we just seen what happened in the Valley when people were talking about rights of people that may be gay or trans, you know, and have children attending these schools. These are all things that everybody has different views and opinions on. But one thing is that we're all people. And like sitting in this circle here, our people believe in a circle of life, and we believe in equality. And that's all we want. I just want to be recognized, and I want to be respected. I don't care what you change the name to. But colonizer is not a good name. Jaguar is a great name. You know, you can come up with a name that maybe respects the people in this area that were indigenous. You know, besides the Gabrielino, there are plenty of people that came here from Mexico, from Central America. There are plenty of people that reside in this area that are indigenous, that work, live, and their kids go to school. And they participate and they pay taxes. So just respect us. You know, we do have a voice. Even though there's only 2% of us left, I'm still here. And I'm working with an anthropologist named Dr. Gary Stickle. You can Google him. We work very closely to monitor these things to make sure the narrative is going to be in our favor. Thank you for listening to me. I know I've taken my time. Thank you so much for respecting me. I appreciate you.
Next speaker is Art Castillo.
Good evening. My name is Art Castillo. Third generation Anaheim, and I got a great uncle and a grandmother right there buried at the Holy Cross Cemetery. And we're sixth generation now here in Orange County, and came from these schools, went to Betsy Ross, and went to Ball, and went to Loera. And but I'll go back to the Betsy Ross time. In sixth grade, our teacher was reading a paperback book of how the West was won, and he said opened up to chapter 5, and we did, and we're all sitting on the floor, and he's on the podium just like this. And as we were looking at the picture, it had a horse with his mouth really angry looking, and a soldier looked about 21 with a sword and reaching out, and then had a little boy, about 16-year-old Indian boy on moccasins running with his facial expression of fear. And our teacher started crying. I didn't really get why he was crying, but we were all looking at him like, what's going on? He shut the book and he couldn't finish it. So it was something that kind of resonated with me, that what we were just young kids, being that we went to Betsy Ross, and then a lot of people went to Fremont and then went to Anaheim. So I'm going to give you some history about how, those who didn't know, that those were called the Mexican schools to us. And back in the days, we know the history of Pearson Park. We used to go swimming, and it was called, when we went there, we ended up swimming on a Tuesday, and then they had to drain the pool. It's just to clean the water because the other people didn't want to be in the same water as us. And when we used to go to, if anybody remembers, the Fox Theater, I don't know if anybody lived here that long time, but it was on Lincoln. It was a Fox Theater, and it said Mexicans upstairs, and we had to go upstairs as kids. And so these are the things that we kind of went through. And I had fellow students at Ball would say, we bought this from you. And I go, bought what? We bought this from you. And I go, we bought California from you. And I said, well, it don't matter. And but we were subject to being in that discrimination of Mexican, Hispanic, what do you want to call us? And they would say, you guys are in gangs. And I'd go, well, you guys are my gang, German, Irish, and Jewish all together. And when we saw the Holocaust back in that time, they showed us the video in junior high. My Jewish friends and my German friends actually departed for a moment there just to see the separation of the Holocaust. It really made, and some of the Italians were being discriminated, and the Irish. They were so many different discriminations and different cultures. But, you know, we kind of still, as young kids, we weren't brought, you know, we're not born that way, but we ended up getting to understand each other, and we became good friends. And it took a long time, but in the 70s, the mid-70s, the Hispanic people came from Mexico. And I noticed our boards and our school didn't really like that at all because they didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Spanish or understand it. And so I was like, I had to go home and tell my dad, what's a Mexican? And he says, you're Mexican too. And I go, wow. I mean, why? Because everybody's really not liking what they're seeing. So then they were put into these apartment complexes. And so I worked for the city at 13, got a work permit. And I was working, and so part of that, I got to see how the community changed in culture to sectoral areas. And that's when things started happening with crime, got bigger. And so based on that was, I was in there trying to help the kids. I was out there helping families. And I used to come here and actually advocate for some kids that were being expelled. And the board would actually, at certain high schools and junior highs, would, because I was coming there for their defense, giving them example, why do we want to put a kid out in the street and not give them an education? And they decided to keep them, and those kids graduated, have families, serving our country. So I used to hear all them expulsions every night. It's like, I used to come here for like almost 25 years. I gave my dedication to both the school board, the city school board, and the school board. And some of you probably remember back in the days that we were here under circumstances of things that were happening at inappropriate things at high school levels, and we fought to get the things straightened out. So again, just letting you know that I haven't been here in a long time, and but you know, we have some board members here probably that either probably don't know or know about these things. I just wanted to kind of give you that as a heads up of, you know, I hope I haven't, like I said, I don't know you guys, so just coming here to give a little tidbit of a history. Thank you very much.
Art, I'd like to ask you, when you were at Betsy Ross and the teacher was reading you that story and was so emotional, do you know what grade you were in at that time?
6th grade.
You were 6th grade,
Yes.
and you were on the floor.
Fifth graders and 6th graders sat in the auditorium. Remember, it was a big auditorium. And,
But you weren't sitting on the floor, you were in a chair.
No, we were on the floor sitting powwow style.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what he did is he was looking at a lot of kind of a longer hair. We had darker skin, and I think that really got to him. And until I got that, I understood what he was, later on in my life, I said, oh, he was looking at us. We were the rich, we're a long time here. So that was something that history was kind of given to us through a different paperback book. And but thank you very much, and good evening.
I just want to thank you. I think these kind of stories are really helpful.
Right.
Thank
No,
you for being here tonight.
I think we need that. And again, I'm glad, and I hope this all, I can get back to going what I used to do. We're 10 years differences here. I'm 10 years older than Jerry. Yeah. There you go. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
gentlemen.
one and all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, you too. Next is presentations. 6.1, Local Control and Accountability Plan, normally called the Lcap, and Annual Update, California School Dashboard and Local Indicators. Dr. Freed, take it away.
Thank you so much. Paulina, just to make sure, am I hitting the return button to go forward? All right, just making sure. All right, well, thank you, Board President O'Neill. Good evening, members of our board, Superintendent Matsuda, our cabinet, of course, members, families, friends, colleagues, staff here and watching online tonight. It gives me great pleasure to be here tonight to share the great work that we've done with our dashboard, specifically our local indicators and our local control accountability plan. So tonight we're going to be going over a little bit more in depth about the process we went through. The one thing I'd ask before we begin, just like we've always done, because it is a lengthier presentation than what we normally do, that if we can, hold questions till the end. But of course, if there's something that comes up that you want to ask, by all means, go ahead and do so. But if we can hold them to the end, that'll be a little easier. We do have our ed staff, our business, and our HR folks in the room so we can answer whatever questions that you might have at the end as well. All right. And I am honored, just so you know, to be presenting tonight with both Mrs. Amanda Bean, our Director of Career Preparedness Systems Framework, and Dr. Roxana Hernandez, who is our Coordinator of Learning and Development, that we're going to share in this presentation tonight. So real quickly, the purpose of this presentation, as the board may recall, this is a requirement of the California Department of Education that we really report on the progress of our local indicators at a board meeting. We're doing that tonight. And you'll learn later that this process that we go through with the local indicators also feeds and impacts the work that we do with our local control accountability plan. We are required to go through a reflective process. The state gives us reflective tools that we utilize to go through and assess where we are along the continuum of implementing our local indicators. The nice thing is there's not a metric connected to it, so we don't have to meet a certain score or whatnot. It's just really showing that our LEA, our local education agency, is going through a reflective process to progress monitor where we are on the continuum and how we're continuing to make strides to grow our practices. And as you may all recall, our accountability system in California has changed over the last several years. We used to have a single score that our schools and our district was judged upon. Now we have more than just a single number. We have a series of measures that allow us to really better gauge how we're doing as an agency. It's really focused on continuous improvement, so it's not necessarily stagnant like a single score might reflect. It's really monitoring also our growth as an agency in along our schools. We love that it does focus on the equity of all student groups, and it's, again, integral to the Lcap development and our local decision making. And as you'll learn a little bit later, we have our state priorities. The local indicators in this process also allows us to go deeper with those state priorities. I'm going to bring up Ms. Amanda Bean.
Good evening. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the dashboard and the different indicators that lend to the progress of AUHSD. So the dashboard is a tool that displays the performance of school districts, schools, and student groups, and it includes a set of state data and local measures that assist in identifying our strengths and our areas that are in need of improvement. The 6 state indicators are based on data that is commonly reported from all districts across the state, and it includes measures such as academic performance, which is the SBAC, chronic absenteeism, English learner progress, graduation rate, suspension rates, and the college and career indicator, which includes things such as A through G completion, CT pathway completion, syllabi literacy, and so on. The local indicators that we're going to talk about tonight are based on data collected at the local level. And so while we're going to focus on the local indicators, I do just want to share with you very quickly an overview of the entire dashboard and the calculations. So in prior years, the calculations were based on the growth between, or the growth or decline over 2 years of performance. And we would be used to seeing the colors, the blue, the green, the yellow, the red, and the orange. However, because of COVID and some of the challenges associated with reporting and student engagement and so on, the state has modified the reporting over the last couple of years. And so for this year, for 2022, we're only, or for last school year, 2022, we were only reporting the current school year, the current year of data. And so you saw that reported in 5 measurements from very low to very high. One thing to note that the status levels are reversed for chronic absenteeism and suspension rate in comparison to the other measures. So the goal is to have a low rate of student absence and suspension, whereas we would want to see a high rate of performance in the other measures when we're looking at our dashboard. The results are represented for our entire district, for each individual school, and also for the defined student groups, such as racial and ethnic groups, low income, English learners, homeless, foster youth, and students with disabilities. For the year of 2022, the College and Career Readiness Indicator, or the measure, was not reported, but will resume for this year in 2023. The dashboard also includes a set of the local indicators that are founded on the local control funding formula, the LCFF priorities. And those priorities are the ones that there is no state level data collected. And so those are the ones that we do our self-reflection on. And those include basic services and conditions, and those would be things such as teacher assignments, safe and clean buildings, instructional materials for all students. Also, it would include the implementation of state academic standards, school climate, parent and family engagement, and access to a broad course of study. To assess progress, the district uses the provided self-reflection tools that is given to us by the State Board of Education, and that's what we use to report our progress to the dashboard. So when we enter our information into the dashboard automatically calculates whether or not we met the performance level. If a district does not meet the performance standards, the dashboard will automatically assign a performance level of not met, or sometimes not met for 2 or more years. Luckily, that hasn't happened to us, though. So, and sometimes when entering a performance level of not met for 2 or more years, that can also be a factor in identifying a district for differentiated assistance. So I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Freed, who's going to share with us about basic services, state standards, and parent engagement.
Thank you. So our first indicator that we're going to go into is our basic services. And as Amanda said, this is making sure that our state priority 1, that teachers are appropriately assigned, students have access to curriculum-aligned instructional materials, and that campuses and our schools are safe, clean, and functional. You can see the standard that, as you all know, we work closely with the Williams Act, and we have visits that take place at school. So that's part of the process that we go through when we use our school accountability report card in the way that we assess and reflect on these areas. I'm proud to say, as you know, we have, this past year, we had close to 1,300 teachers. When you look at the data for 21, 22, there were 19 misassignments and 14 misassignments by setting ELD reported. And just as a reminder for the board, when we talk about a misassignment, these are teachers who may be the marching band teacher who's teaching a section of PE. Or it could be the teacher who has a section of a CTE class but doesn't have the CTE, the Career Technical Education credential. So you often will see that in some of those elective courses. And again, 19 district-wide is really pretty impressive mark. When you look at the 14 misassignments by setting, the ELD, English Language Development, reported, those are teachers who maybe do not have their English learner authorization completed, so HR works closely with those teachers to go through the process to get their work completed. And again, given the number of teachers that we have and who are working with students who are in the EL program, it's a pretty impressive mark as well. And this is traditional. Every time we present, we usually have a handful of misassignments as a result of those examples I just shared. In terms of access to curriculum-aligned instructional materials, 100% of our students had access to their own copies of those standards-aligned materials, whether it was textbooks, the consumables, or the materials that teachers have generated as a part of their course of study. And then clean and functional school facilities. All of our schools have met the mark with the Williams visits that we meet the good repair standard. This isn't to say that we don't have facility needs. Of course, we have needs on all of our campuses where things can be updated and improved, but in terms of the bar that's been set for this review, we have met the repair standards that have been set for us. In terms of the second local indicator that I want to focus on is the implementation of state standards, which is state priority number 2. We annually measure our progress implementing these standards through a number of means. We obviously use the reflective tool that they have given us, but there's a lot of work that we do as a system to constantly gauge and progress monitor how we're doing with the way we approach instruction and the implementation of our standards. One of the things that we're really proud of is the way that we show our areas of strength in this area. We provide a ton of professional learning to our staff in the way that we approach teaching and learning, and have really done a lot of work intentionally to align our standards with the frameworks and the way that we create systems to support its implementation in our district. As you may see when you look at this next slide, these are images that I know you're well familiar with. I'll start with the image on the right, our Career Preparedness Systems Framework, where you see those 3 circles. This really beautifully connects our approach to teaching and learning. This is connected also to our community schools approach, but it really looks at this 21st century skills, our 5 Cs. It's connected to the technical skills, which is a cross between the traditional content standards or the state standards we just talked about, but we've also expanded our technical skills where it looks at the hard skills that may come out of a pathway that's very specific to a pathway. It could be our dual enrollment classes that we offer with our partners at Fullerton and Cypress College, and it's also the Google certificates that we're proud being the first public school district in the country to offer these experiences to our students during the school day. So that makes up the technical skills circle on the framework. And then the last but certainly not least is the youth voice and purpose. This is where we've done a lot of intentional work around civic engagement and really finding ways to elevate our students' voice so they find their voice within their content, but also find how they fit and the identity around who they are as they're learning their content in the different courses. Then you see the older first best instruction placement mat, which also connects to the work that we've done to approach our standards. And of course, you see a specific image that connects to the 5 C's. This slide just really references the intentional work our district has done in creating systems of support for professional learning the way that we implement our standards. It's intentional that you see these different circles not in a vertical format. You know that we believe very much in shared governance and flat governance, so it's done intentionally through a horizontal lens where we work together in a flow back and forth. And these aren't all of the systems that we have, but just to give you an example of some of the structures and teams that we have in place to really support our teachers in this case with professional learning when it comes to the implementation of our standards. In terms of areas of growth, as we do our reflection, not only do we look at the assets and the things that we're proud of, but we do have some areas of growth as it comes to the implementation of our state standards. We've identified the need for our professional learning to be differentiated to meet the needs of individual teachers. Just like we would expect our teachers to differentiate their instruction to better meet the needs of their students based on their various levels of performance, we as an ed division and as a district also need to be looking at how we can support our teachers in that same regard. How can we differentiate the way that we approach CPSF as an example? So the teacher who may be further along has the support he or she may need versus the teacher who's struggling to understand what this might look like in a classroom. So that differentiation is important and of course a next step for us. We also want to continue to refine and grow our performance task assessments and the capstone program. I think all of you participated in our capstone programs this year, which was really the inaugural year of doing this district-wide. And we are so proud and blessed with the admin, the teachers, the classified staff, and just the community's work in making the capstones real on our campuses. It's a tremendous opportunity really to have our students showcase the great work that they're doing in the way that we implement our standards, but the way that it's been personalized and made relevant to them. But like anything, we have ways to grow and ways to go. This was our first year, so we're going to take the lessons learned from this year, and next year be more intentional with how we continue to grow our capstone programs and the performance task assessments or projects that our students engaged in to really connect the content to their own life. We want to continue with ethnic studies implementation and course development. As you heard from our public speakers, ethnic studies is something we've been doing for quite some time, but as you know, it's a graduation requirement and it's coming quickly, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to work in not only the course development, but the way that we do professional learning with our teachers who are going to be engaging in those courses. To do it in a way that's very sensitive, very loving, but also that's done in a way where we're really celebrating our differences and celebrating the perspectives of other cultures, racial groups as well. This is not about teaching hate or dividing cultures. It's really about bringing people together and that belonging. So that's going to be central to our focus as we continue our ethics studies implementation. And then lastly, and this isn't all, but the highlighted areas of growth for us is to expand our math demonstration labs to include high school teachers. We've done a lot of work the last several years intentionally around our junior highs, and we're going to continue to support math at our junior highs. But one of the things that we've learned is now we have the time and the need to expand to our high schools. So for this upcoming year, the math demonstration lab will go to our high schools as well. And that's going to include, I believe it's Savannah, Magnolia, and Cypress. So those are the 3 schools. And I can explain, if you'd like, a little bit what the math demo labs look like, but those opportunities are going to be expanded to our high schools. And then lastly for me, before I turn it back over to Ms. Bean, is the parent engagement piece. And I know Mr. Hernandez and our team, we have a conference right now that they're at, but we want to talk about parent engagement and what we're doing to have met that local indicator. So you can see we seek input from parents in decision-making process. That's the standard that we are expected to uphold, and also promoting parent participation in a variety of programs. We also use the reflective tools that they've given us to gauge how we're doing in this area. For us, one of the things that we've learned as we continue to reflect, and we've shared at previous meetings, is the strengths that we have as it connects to parent and family engagement. We have our 13 community schools, and we're proud to say the work that we've done to really build those family resource centers at those schools, while supporting the schools that haven't been designated as a community school to continue to build a space where parents and families can come in and feel connected and get the support and resources that they need as well. The services and programming that's implemented based on the individual site needs and assets assessment. So we've been doing surveys to really collect the unique data for each school community, knowing that what Cypress High School may need may look very different than what Catella High School may need, and making sure that we really take the time to learn about our communities, the assets that they bring, but also the needs that they have, so we can intentionally then provide the right supports that they're asking for as we collect that data. We want to make sure that when we do this work with our families, we've been really proud that we have an asset-based approach with our work, so we're really starting from the place of what's working in our community. We absolutely know that there are challenges that we see and are faced within every one of our communities, but we really are trying intentionally intentionally to begin our approach to that asset-based approach, starting with what's working and how do we leverage that to grow and expand and support the areas that are identified as gaps or needs. And then we're really proud of the work that we've built around our parent reflective learning walks, our parent leadership academies, our family education series that have created this culturally responsive approach to teaching and learning. It's creating that environment where we want our families and our communities to feel welcomed and a sense of belonging. And again, create that focus where everything that we're doing still connects back to the classroom. And then lastly, the strength that we want to share are the opportunities that we've created for parents to actively participate in decision-making bodies with at the site level and at the district level. This is an example you might see at our district DLAC, our District English Learner Advisory Council, or the site level ELAC, same concept. You'll see this at our school site councils at the site. We also have our district steering committee. We have parents who serve on our district steering committee and are at the table helping to make decisions as well in terms of how we not only look to spend the money as to support our community school approach, but looking at the data that we're collecting to basically help us make informed decisions on what each respective community may need so we can make sure that we're addressing those needs and celebrating and promoting those assets. Areas of growth, next steps within the focus of parent and family engagement. We recently just came back from Canada where we got to work with a district in Surrey. And one of the reasons we went up there, one of a few reasons, was to learn more about the way that they use data to inform their next steps. They have a research and evaluation team, and we went up there to look about how we can more effectively analyze and then publicly share out the various data points that we collect. You know, we know that many districts, ourselves included, can have tons of data at our fingerprints. But being able to use it in a way that really does inform next steps and communicate in a way that makes sense to all of our community members is essential. Sometimes, as you know, we can get caught up in edu-speak or using the educational jargon that may overwhelm people who are not from the educational arena. So we want to make sure that we're really intentional with how we collect this data and then use it to really improve outcomes for both our students and, in this case, our families, our parents. We also want to look at leadership capacity and engagement. As you know, even though we've done a lot of work to improve and expand upon our parent numbers in terms of engagement, we still have students and families who may be disengaged. How can we be more intentional to connect with the disengaged? That is a priority that we're really going to go deeper with this next year, and I can share as well at the end, if you'd like, some specific strategies that we have in place to try to really reach out intentionally to grow our parent engagement opportunities and to reach out to those families who are often not at the table when we're trying to connect with them to help them with the decisions that we're making and the work that we're trying to engage in. And now I'm going to shift it back to Ms. Bean, who's going to talk about school climate.
So school climate is related to the perceptions of school safety and connectedness. The tool that the district uses is the Lcap Student Survey and the California Healthy Kids Survey. That's administered in 7th, 9th, and 11th grade. The district met the standard for the school climate indicator. Last year, the students took, about 50% of students in AUHSD took the Lcap survey, and the results showed that 71.4% of all students reported that their school provides them the resources needed to learn while in school. 73% felt they had access to a school counselor. 73.7% share that their teachers include activities and lessons which incorporate the 5 C's, and 72.3% of students feel their school has made a significant effort to keep them informed about important issues and events they participate in. Some of the things that we've done over the years and will continue to do to improve school climate are implementing resources such as Capturing Kids' Hearts, and working with OC Human Relations to provide restorative justice specialists to support our schools. These programs help promote skill development, self-managing classrooms, decrease discipline issues, focus on building community, and fostering respect, resolving conflict, and pursuing equality. Additionally, students are encouraged to have voice and discover their purpose. Classroom instruction focuses on the 5 C's and the Career Preparedness Systems Framework to improve academics, increase student engagement, and decrease unwanted behaviors. To also improve upon students feeling a positive connection to their school, each high school has a student ambassador that leads their respective schools' Raising Student Voices and Participation, or RSVP program. RSVP students work alongside the administration of their school to learn more about their campus and how they can make an impact at their site. Students develop self-advocacy and leadership skills and learn the process of how changes can be made at their site and district level, and therefore contributing and informing the Lcap. They are encouraged to be civically engaged and participate in service opportunities. RSVP is student-led and plays a vital role in empowering student voices to make lasting district-wide change. And the last priority I'm going to talk about is course access, and this ensures that students have access to and are enrolled in a broad course of study. Our areas of strength here in AUHSD is our A through G completion rate. We are at a 55.9% A through G completion rate, and we are outperforming other Orange County school districts in almost every student group. We have 25 unique CTE pathways offered across 12 officially recognized industries. In 2022, 16% of our graduates completed a 2 to 3 year sequence of a CTE pathway. AUHSD offers 8 world languages in the areas of Spanish, French, Korean, Japanese, Arabic, Mandarin, American Sign Language, and Vietnamese. In 2022, 21.3% of our graduating class earned a state seal of biliteracy, and that is actually a leading number in the state of California. We offer arts programs at every school with a broad range of options in both visual and performing arts. And lastly, we have a broad set of dual enrollment courses offered both during the school day and after school. And currently, every single high school has dual enrollment offered during the school day. In 2022, we had 1,565 individual students take a dual enrollment course, and many kids take more than one class, and so for a total of 2,530 classes were taken and recorded on high school transcripts. Our areas of growth are really to still strengthen the connection between the students' interests and their strengths to their 6-year plan, which then feeds our master schedule process and ensures that we have access to students to all of these wonderful programs. Building a strategic system will increase the students' ability to take A through G coursework while also wanting to complete a pathway, earn the seal of biliteracy, be in their visual performing arts courses, or be in a dual enrollment course, or sometimes all of those things. So we're really working still on the implementation of a district-wide 6-year plan through ARIES and E-Cadence that ties the strengths and their strengths assessments that the students take in Thrively. And we are always working on leveraging the master schedule process to ensure access for all student groups into these opportunities. So as we transition on to the Lcap presentation, I just wanted to tie together how the work around the local indicators in the dashboard informs the development of the Lcap. So the data that was provided on the dashboard identifies our areas of strength and our areas of need, and those local indicators provide us with additional data to inform the decision-making and planning during the Lcap process. So now I'm going to invite Dr. Roxana Hernandez to share with us about our Lcap process, or Dr. Freed, just kidding, sorry.
I'm going to come up real quick before I bring up Dr. Hernandez, because as we transition to our Lcap portion of the presentation, I want to first begin by just acknowledging not only Dr. Hernandez, but also, I know Robert Solivar's not here, he's at a conference, but just their leadership and the great work that they did in leading our community through this process. It's a big undertaking to put 6 sessions or 5 sessions together, collect the data, do things in a timely manner to create not only the booklet, but then organize the groups, communicate the findings in each focus group back to the group, coordinate the efforts with our steering committee who looks at the work collectively to navigate and make some decisions. They have done just a tremendous job in leading them, our community through this process. So I want to first acknowledge Dr. Hernandez and Mr. Solivar for their leadership. I also want to thank, I know Joe Carmona's in the room. He and Manuel Colon, as you know, have led this process the last several years. And with this transition, with both Robert and Roxana being new, he's been a tremendous support, I know, to Roxana and our team in helping with that transition through that lens of coherence. So Joe, I know we really appreciate you and your support. You're always going to be an Ed staff member at heart, right? So we know that. And then lastly, I want to thank our coordinators and directors who are in the room who not only participate in the Lcap process, but they also facilitate. So when we break our families and our community up into different rooms, and this year, as you'll learn, we were so large, we had to go to 2 completely different facilities. We couldn't host them all here. It is our directors, our coordinators, and basically our district leaders that really step up to help facilitate and lead our parents, our students, our colleagues across the district through this process. So I want to thank them for their leadership, because we know it's not an easy process when you're sometimes it feels like you're herding cats. They all come up with their own agendas. But to facilitate that conversation in a way that's meaningful, that's respectful, and that ultimately leads to outcomes that's going to better support our students, it's with a lot of gratitude that I thank our ed staff, HR, business team for their leadership. So now with that, it gives me great pleasure to bring up Dr. Hernandez, who will lead us through our LCAP journey.
Thank you, Dr. Freed. It is my pleasure to provide an overview of this year's Local Control and Accountability Plan, as well as our education partner engagement process. But before I do that, I know that Dr. Freed already thanked folks that have laid the foundation, but I also want to take a moment and acknowledge the work of our board and cabinet for laying the foundation to a robust and inclusive process. I want to start with a quick review of the local control funding formula and how it works. The local control funding formula is the way the state provides funding to school districts. Under LCFF, school districts receive a uniform base grant for every student, which is adjusted by grade level. School districts such as ours receives additional supplemental grants for students with greater needs, defined as our unduplicated pupils, low income, English learners, and foster youth. We also receive additional concentration funding when the number of unduplicated students enrolled in the district make up more than 55% of our district's total enrollment. The state has identified 8 priority areas to help students succeed. The 8 priorities can be categorized into 3 domains: conditions for learning, engagement, and student outcomes. Under conditions for learning, we have the following priorities: basic conditions, implementation of state standards, and access to a broad course of study. Under student outcomes, we have student achievement and other pupil outcomes. Also, under the priority engagement, we have parent-family engagement, student engagement, and school climate. At AUHSD, we see the LCAP development process as an opportunity to tell our story, to highlight our accomplishments and gain comprehensive insight from our educational partners. We are in year 2 of a 3-year plan. This year, the focus was to assess and evaluate last year's actions, and based on our most current data, come to a consensus to maintain and/or enhance our actions through recommended priorities. The recommendations are also based on the state priorities and our needs and assets. In AUHSD, the development of the LCAP has been a unifying process that involves significant and purposeful engagement with our educational partners, and we're very proud of that. We have developed 3 LCAP goals. These goals are aligned to the 8 state priorities, our district vision, mission, and core values. Every year, we like to take a moment to revisit these goals and ensure that they continue to represent our district values and drivers. And these goals continue to do just that. When developing the LCAP, we closely looked at data specific to our unduplicated students. Again, these are our low-income English learners and foster youth. We also reviewed the needs of unduplicated students that may also be students with disabilities and/or homeless youth. During the engagement process, we asked our educational partners to keep these important student groups at the forefront of their decision-making and their recommendations. As you can see here, this is an image of the LCAP process, which was a true convening and a hands-on collaborative experiences for our stakeholders. Here is our 2023 LCAP timeline. We began the process back in January with our DLAC LCAP presentation, followed by the steering committee and LCAP meetings. We then submitted the LCAP to the Orange County Department of Ed in May, and we will end the LCAP process this year with the Board of Trustee LCAP approval on June 15th. Our educational partners were provided with an LCAP booklet that contains our LCAP meeting dates, LCAP goals, our AUHSD mission, vision, and core values. It also contains information on our educational drivers and the 22-23 LCAP planning tool. The booklet was made available in English, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. A copy was made available for our board to peruse at your leisure. As part of our engagement process this year, we had an esteemed guest and educational partner, Dr. Jose Moreno, speak at our parent orientation, and he launched our first whole LCAP meeting. He supported us in contextualizing our data, pushing our thinking, and encouraging dialogue and inquiry that helped guide our conversations through the LCAP process. This year, we saw an increase in student participation. And we want to thank our student ambassadors for their outreach efforts in encouraging their fellow peers to participate in the LCAP. We also want to thank our transportation department for providing busing that allowed for more student engagement. Additionally, this year, in an effort to keep sites, students, and parents informed and updated regarding the LCAP activities taking place during the focus group meetings, our student ambassadors, once again, rose to the occasion and created the LCAP meeting highlights. The highlights included presentations and videos summarizing the LCAP focus group meetings, and our site principals shared the LCAP highlights during their weekly communication or used the presentations and videos to further discuss the LCAP process during their site-level coffee chats. The LCAP highlights were also made available on the district's webpage. Special thanks to Mrs. Hilda Vasquez for supporting our ambassadors with this effort. Also new this year, our principals held site-level LCAP data chats. These data chats provided parents and families with a more in-depth review of their site-specific data and metrics. Special thanks to Araceli Chavez for working with our FACES to support these efforts. Lastly, we want to thank Brookhurst Principal, Mr. Amancio, and his maintenance and operation crew for opening their doors and allowing us to expand our focus groups to the school site. Here you see our educational partner engagement process. So our meetings started from February to April. 3 of the meetings were conducted in focus groups, and the other 2 meetings were held at large and included staff, families, students, and partner agencies. Additionally, 5 steering committee meetings were held to oversee the LCAP process, plan engagement meetings, consult with necessary partners, and debrief the findings from the stakeholder engagement meetings. The LCAP education partner input process began with surveys completed by parents, students, and staff. The district received a total of 19,889 responses. 14,340 of these responses came from students. 3,764 responses from parents, and 1,785 responses from staff. These surveys were completed in February, and they identified areas of focus that were incorporated into the partner engagement process. Additionally, the district had over 550 in-person participants attend 1 or more LCAP focus group meeting. Our students were the second highest majority in attendance. As part of the process, we had 4 focus groups structured around the 8 priorities. Focus group members concentrated on draft recommendations that were related to the state priorities assigned to their focus group. And each focus group consisted of partners from all groups. Focus group members examined and refined LCAP recommendations through the lens of the state priority to which they were assigned. Here's a glimpse of our focus groups at work. As you can see, they were very well attended and engaging. The focus groups developed recommended priorities that were considered by all partners. In the final LCAP whole group meeting, educational partners were able to submit electronically their top 3 recommended priorities. Here's a synopsis of the highest agreed upon recommendations. Priority 1 and 2 was to lower class size, hire and retain teachers, and increase the ability to build deeper and more authentic connections between teachers and students. Recommended priority number 3, to retain or hire more counselors, social workers, psychologists, and keep smaller caseloads to provide quality academic and social support for all students, especially McKinney-Vento, foster youth, plurilingual students, low income, and students with disabilities. Recommended priority 4 is to research and implement flexible learning opportunities and course offerings for all students. For example, bell schedules, block scheduling, hybrid classes or programming, and expand e-learning. Here are additional priorities that were recommended. All of the priorities are listed in the Lcap by priority order as established by our educational partners. These recommendations have enhanced our existing Lcap action items. As you can see in the image, we had a full house on our final day. We were very proud of our student representatives from each focus group who came up to the podium to present their group's recommendations. An additional highlight that night was an AUHSD talk presented by Susana Quesada, a student at Catella High School. We were very proud of the outpouring of educational partners, but especially proud of our ambassadors and student representation throughout the Lcap process. Here are some additional pictures of the last Lcap, where our superintendent, Mr. Matsuda, emphasized that the Lcap process is proof that democracy is alive and well in AUHSD, where our students, parents, and staff have a voice in the Lcap process. And of course, you can't forget the time we spent celebrating the culmination of the process with the taco dinner. So at this point, I would like to invite Dr. Freed to make the final remarks on our Lcap process and share some highlights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. All right, and as we come to a conclusion of our presentation, just a reminder that this process really looks deeply at the things that we can do to improve outcomes for our students. And as we're doing this, sorry, I'm usually really loud. As we're doing this work, we're reminded that front and center is the work that we do instructionally, what happens in the classroom. And we're reminded about our framework, our career preparedness systems framework, and the work that we've been doing and engaging with our students and our families to ensure they get a whole child approach to education. As we celebrated our time together, we were reminded of accomplishments that we as a district have really been fortunate and blessed to celebrate over the years because of the work that we've done. Still recognizing there's work to be done, but we want to take the time to celebrate our work, that the Lcap has brought these kinds of accomplishments. So as an example, you can see when you look at our A through G completion rate, you know, in 21-22, we were at a 55.9%, well, the state average was a 43.6%. Our graduation rates at 92.4, whereas the state average is 87%. In civic engagement, you all know that we have all of our schools, all 20 schools, have been recognized and designated as California democracy schools. We have proportionally the largest number of community schools, where this past year we had 13 schools receive funding to begin their work, intentional work, to really serve as a community school, as a hub for their community. And I'm proud to say that we just received 2 additional schools in this upcoming grant, where that'll be joining our 13 previous schools, Hope and Polaris, bringing us to a total of 15. And because of the great work that we've been doing, we are serving as a leader for the state as one of 3 districts that serve as a demonstration district for our community school approach, which is grounded in instruction. So with that, I thank you for the time this evening, and we now will take any questions that you might have as it connects to our process or the Lcap plan. So thank you.
Thank you, staff, for your presentation. And Ms. Guerrero, you have any questions?
Yes, I did. I had a few. Thank you so much to the 3 of you for presenting. The think my first question, I think you spoke about the math lab. Can you elaborate a little more on that and how that's been working in the junior highs?
Yeah, so the math lab is a professional learning experience. And what we found is that our teachers needed support in how they can continue to grow their mathematical practices and pedagogies around math. When I know when I grew up, and for many of us, that when we were in math classes, it was very much about math calculations, teaching students to memorize formulas and equations, and a lot of repetition. Whereas the standards that we're now expected to implement are really more about the conceptualization of math and really thinking about the logic behind math and how we really approach problems. So it's a different way of teaching math, essentially. And the math labs serve as, we have, in the junior high, we've had, I think, 4 schools. The high schools are going to have the 3, where we have, really, it's an east, center, and west approach, but we've identified teachers in math who have really been the models for bringing these kinds of instructional practice in the classroom, and there have been a couple of periods of release. And what happens is, just like a reflective teacher learning walk, Katie Chowler is our math curriculum specialist, previously Julie Spikerman. I know Amy Kwan is in the room, who at one point was overseeing mathematics. We would get math teachers from across the district on various days where they'd be pulled out to go visit these math demonstration teachers, where they would begin their morning observing the teacher and watching him or her teach their content with some reflection that would take place afterwards. When the visits were over and observing the instruction, they would then have time with the teacher to really reflect and dialogue with them in terms of the why behind the lesson design, why I did this, why I did that, where they would build capacity in lesson design and the approach to mathematical practices. And then there was time built in the day where those teachers who went on the visit had time to engage in lesson design themselves, integrating what they've learned throughout that morning into their own practices. So we were starting to see movement in the way that teachers were shifting their approach to teaching and learning as it connected to math. So that's why we wanted to expand it to the high schools. We started with the junior highs because that's where we felt the need was the greatest in the beginning, because there were transition from elementary to junior high, and we really needed to focus on the professional learning there. That's when we began our integrated approach as well, and now it's maturing up to the high school level.
Okay. And how were those sites selected to participate in the
It was really
lab?
selected based on the teachers that were on their campus who had the capacity and have demonstrated the skill set to teach through that shift. There also had to be a willingness on the teacher, right? We could say, hey, we want you, teacher A, to do this, but they had to be willing to, yeah, I'm willing to take 2 periods or 3 periods of release to be a leader for the district and have people come to my classroom regularly, and for me to then walk them through my lesson design. So at the junior high, and this is off the cuff, I think it's Mr. Watson, who's at Orangeview, Miss Reed, who is at South, then there's Miss Hose, who's at Ball, and then there's a new teacher at Dale, Jessica Kim, who's at Dale. And the high schools, because it's going to be new this next year, I know Miss Fault, I think, is at Cypress, and I can't remember the other teachers. They're going to be starting this next year. But they were selected because they've demonstrated over and over again their innovation in the classroom, and the way that they approach teaching and learning is really more connected to our CPSF framework. It's really a whole child approach to education in math than it is about just teaching facts, formulas, and equations.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I follow up?
Yes,
Just are those just for that campus, or do other campuses come to them?
Those are district level programs, so
Okay.
teachers from across the district can go. Now, of course, the teachers on that campus have the benefit of them being there, but we schedule intentional math demo labs every month where we bring teachers from across our sites to go visit. And sometimes we'll do it where it may be a pocket of teachers from the same school, and sometimes it's intentional where we bring teachers from other schools so they can collaborate with teachers at other schools. And sometimes that's really helpful because, you know, you get stuck in your relationships in your own ways, and when you see other people who you don't normally get to work with, they sometimes come with a different approach or a different mindset, and that's really healthy in really growing instructional practices. So it's both.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yes,
question?
of course, of course.
How are we ensuring that it's working?
So that's a great question. So part of the work that we do is our curriculum specialist has a lens of who is all going, and we actually had our principals at a principal meeting. In lieu of a principal meeting, we had them break up into groups where they went to go observe these math demo labs as well. So they got to see firsthand what this instruction looks like. So we expect that when they're doing their classroom visitations, especially in a math class, they're looking for these kinds of shifts, especially for those teachers who have participated in these demo labs. And of course, as you know, our evaluation process, I know Brad and his team have done a marvelous job in building capacity in the way that we evaluate staff, but we've never looked at our evaluation process as a gotcha. It's always intended to grow and improve practice. So through that lens, when our administrators walk in classrooms, they're also looking through that lens of how do I grow, how do I improve pedagogy. And then we also try to leverage our professional learning late start time, our PLCs, to grow those practices as well. And as teachers go, they're then also expected to help grow and support their colleagues as they do that work. And be, if anything, be a model to their colleagues when they're doing that work, because they have their own site level reflective learning walks, which isn't necessarily content specific, it's more instructional connected, but as people go into the classrooms, they should be seeing the CPSF and that whole child approach even in a math class. So that's where we're seeing that stuff improve.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Okay, and I've got a question. How many years have we been doing this? Is this our first year, or
No,
this
so this
math has been several, isn't it?
Yeah, so when we got there was a block grant we got, Joe. I can't remember the official name of it, but it's been probably about 3 or 4 years. I know when the pandemic hit, obviously we took a couple pause years, but I think prior to the pandemic, it was probably 2 years, maybe prior to the pandemic that we started this.
That's what
and
I
we took the
thought.
pause, and now we're
Okay.
continuing. Now we want to expand to the high schools.
Okay, so we pretty much got most of our junior high math teachers then that have been, have we or not?
I think because of subs, truthfully, we probably haven't had all of our math teachers
No, I know,
participate.
pretty
but
much,
we've
I
we've
said,
had
yeah.
a decent amount, because if we do them every single month, sometimes twice a month, you're getting between 6 and 8 teachers each time to go
Okay.
to those walks. So it does start to add up, especially even though we may have 1,300 teachers, when you break it down by math, we could have 200 math teachers in the district. So
Right.
our goal ultimately is to get more and more teachers to participate and see what could be, and then have the support to make that shift themselves.
I think that's a great question, though, because right now it has been voluntary, and there are teachers that
Don't want.
could benefit from this, you know, so I think we are tracking that by sites. And this is based on a very successful model developed through
Correct.
Kelly Gallagher on the English language arts side. So, you know, it's voluntary. I could tell you, though, the teachers who do participate have really appreciated the reflective learning that's going on in math.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And these, just as another point of context, is these are math demo teachers at the junior high, especially this year, given the work around the PTAs, the performance task assessments in our capstone. Math has been one of those subject matters that has struggled, more so than the other content areas, with what a performance task looks like in math. So I know they have been working on mentor performance task assessments that they can use to share with other math teachers and departments as they begin to build out their own PTAs as well. So they're serving as a leader and as a model in that regard as well.
Just,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead,
No, no,
Jessica.
please.
No,
Oh, I was gonna ask a different question. Is it on?
no,
Okay.
that's fine.
Is that okay? Okay. I had a question on goal 1 on the English learner reclassification rates. Can you speak to how we're supporting that work on the site level?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to actually bring up Dr. Renee Bryant. She oversees our Director of Plurilingual Services, Multilingual Services. She's going to speak because she's been leading a lot of the work with our site level EL task force, along with just work in supporting our sites in that area. So she's going to go ahead and speak to that.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for that important question. I think reclassification, it is confusing a little bit when you just look at the numbers. So if you would allow me, I first want to talk about the data a little bit.
Okay.
So, and the context of the assessment. So about 2015, we had the CELT exam. We moved to the LPAC. During that time, they allowed us to choose our own criteria. So if you look at the data, we had about 1,000 students we were able to reclassify because we were able to choose how we were going to reclassify them in the test area of LPAC, if that makes sense, because it wasn't fully operational. They hadn't had the bands yet of the scores. So now we are reclassifying. I'm really proud that we reclassified about 548 students this year. Last year was only 300 and something, before that even less. And so there's been this time of moving, you know, they had the saying of a moving target. So once they had the bands done, they said you could reclassify any English learner at a level 3 or a level 4 that met the 5 criteria. So there are the LPAC scores, there is the CASP scores, then there is parent input and teacher input. And so once they said 3 and 4, still great numbers. And then there was some advocacy to change that to a 4. And then it became even more difficult to reclassify the scholars. So at this point, if you're just looking at our data from 2017 to 2023, you see it goes from about 1,000 students being reclassified to 500. It looks bad if you don't really understand the context, right? There's a story behind everything. So that's a story and the context behind reclassification around the state, not just for Anaheim Union. And so how we are supporting our sites to be able to reclassify our scholars is, one, we have our EL task force that meets twice a year with every single site. We also have our EL admin, EL coordinator, ELD chair meetings that we have once a month. And so, as you know, 2 years ago, we rewrote the ELPL master plan. And so within there is all of the context. It's kind of like our EL go-to book for any questions they have. But we regularly have our teams come in for professional learning once a month. We keep them up on the changing targets, because that's what it is. We had FPM last year, I don't know if you remember that, but we had our federal program monitoring, and they also asked us to change things about our requirements. There was a time where we allowed rationale, and so we are not allowed to allow for rationale for reclassification anymore. And so every year, basically, we do have to kind of reteach. People have to unlearn habits and then learn new ways of reclassification. And so we support our teams, again, twice a year. We go to the sites for our plurilingual task force meetings. We have our monthly EL admin, EL coordinator meetings, and then in the last 2 years, because of the process of FPM and needing to have all of our data housed in one place, we did, thanks to you all, adopt Elevation as a data warehouse for ourselves, a platform where it's very easy for all of our staff to be able to find information on our plurilingual scholars and be able to reclassify them instead of lots of Google Docs everywhere. I know it was a lot of information, but hopefully it makes sense.
Good. Yeah, no, that was helpful.
It's layered and it's a little complex, yes.
While you're here,
Yes.
remind me when we started the ELD certification and that process,
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so what slide is that? Where we have the basic services we met it, but in 2021, 21, 22, there were the misassignments, and it was the ELD reporting on that. Do you remember?
This is coming from HR. So this is the EL learner authorization. So that's something that's been in place. From what Scott Jensen had indicated to me, because we hadn't shared this information at previous board meetings, but I guess that report has always been there. And this year when they gave us the data, that was there too. So even in Ed staff, we talked about, like, have you seen this before? That's a process. There's a census window, and it's a very short window. And when they get the reports of whichever teachers need to complete or have not completed their authorization, there's this very small window to get that done, which often isn't enough time. So we have to report it as a misassignment. But then HR works with those teachers to get themselves cleared. Kind of like we did back in the day with the CLAD or the B-CLAD. We had teachers who had to go through a process to get certified. It's the same thing. And it's nothing I haven't seen recently until this year when they gave us that data, and we had to engage with HR to learn more about it. But it's something we've been doing for quite some time.
Thank you.
That's what we talked about at staff.
Thank you.
Okay, and just thank you for allowing me some grace to be here late. Our curriculum specialist is hospitalized, so I went to Fountain Valley to visit her. So thank you for your grace.
And then,
Keep going.
okay. And then I have one final question on goal 2 for engagement opportunities for all parents and families. Can you speak to how we are utilizing our existing spaces with our community schools and PTA meetings to get parents involved with the Lcap process?
With the Lcap process?
Lcap process, yes.
Ooh, so with the Lcap process, there's been a number of things that we've done to try to really increase just parent engagement as a whole. And then I know at our coffee chats with the principals, I know our ambassadors have gone out to coffee chats as well. There's a lot of talk around and a lot of information being given to our sites and our parents around the opportunity to engage in our Lcap process. I know that there's a number of things that our parent engagement, our family engagement team has been doing to try to increase access to parents. You may recall for a lot of our parents to volunteer, they have to be fingerprinted. We're moving to the Raptor piece where they don't, that sometimes serves as a barrier for some families. Now with the Raptor, they're going to be able to engage and be on campus more. So some families don't come because they feel like they're not welcome because they can't do the fingerprinting process. The Raptor is going to eliminate that process. So that's something we're moving towards. Also, we have our Parent Leadership Academy modules, the scope and sequence that's been developed by our FACES, our Family and Community Engagement Specialists at all of our campus, that those modules have elements where there's more inclusivity, and it's based upon the data that the FACES have been collecting around their sites. So those modules have been really targeted to better meet the needs of that specific community based on the things that they're asking for. And then through that, they weave in the Lcap process, that this is the opportunity that if you see things you want, or there are things that are not in place that you want in place, this is the opportunity to really engage and ask for these kinds of things. So there's a lot of things that the site's been doing. We've obviously done a lot to also improve access in terms of I know with Dr. Bryant and the translation department, making sure they have access to things in their home language. So there's a lot of work that we've been doing to try to engage and really get families more connected to the work and the LCAP process. So
for the survey, it was sent out to all of our families in different languages and put into like our community schools and making sure they're sending that out as well.
Yes, and matter of fact, and I know Maritza Bermudez is here because Mr. Hernandez and our team are at our conference, but I know the survey, it's interesting. The survey went out to our parents across the district with the community school approach, but I know the community schools had a much higher rate of return than our non-community schools that didn't receive the distinction. That's obviously, there's a huge staff implication for those schools that got the money. They have a community school coordinator, community school teacher lead, so there was way more intentional effort because of the staff dedicated to that work and helping to promote the survey and get that response back.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Percy? Nope.
No,
Ms. Smith?
I have.
Just an observation. It's just so interesting to see the history of education and how trends occur, and they become popular and then they go down. And then some other trend comes up and something else is lowered. And I've seen this historically, and just the example of memorizing numbers for math. And then calculators came in, and now colleges are teaching young students to come out and teach math by the standards of what they're teaching. So it's just interesting, I think, for the general public to understand it's like medicine. It just has ups and downs and plateaus and trends, and this is a wonderful example that you all got tonight.
Ms. Randall-Trejo?
Thank you. I really appreciated hearing about taking steps with professional learning, humbling, and taking that reflective look and how we're engaging our teachers and teaching our teachers. I appreciate hearing about that. On the capstone program, you have it as areas of growth. What were some of the challenges and what were some of the triumphs?
Okay, great question. So I'm going to start with the triumphs because we want to start with asset-based. We have been trying, I think, for a number of years to really take to scale our capstone program that we learned about at Savannah and then Western and Loera had begun. I think a triumph is that all of our schools participated in capstones this year. That this year was the year we all did the work, and I participated in multiple capstone program interviews and showcases, and to see our students sharing how education worked for them, how the content they were engaging in classrooms became more relevant and meaningful and connected to their own lives. Seeing students ask less and less, why do I have to learn this? I don't want to be, they're not asking because they see the connection with the skills and how they're transferable no matter what path they choose. I think what was fascinating, and is a definite triumph, is I know our ed staff team knows that every year we engage with our site leadership teams twice a year formally through what's called our SPSA reviews, our single plan for student achievement reviews. And often at those meetings, and there are great meetings and there are protocols that we run and we engage with the team, but often we're faced with or we're encountering barriers, right? Their perceived barriers why kids can't do certain things. And this year, I'm just so proud that when we were engaging with our sites at our reviews, you never heard students can't do or this won't work. They were working intelligently and intentionally to make this real, and there was a belief that our students can do this. And we saw firsthand that our students did do it. And even though it was year one and we clearly have rooms for growth, there was a lot to celebrate. And the quality of what we saw was fantastic. Mr. Matsuda.
Yeah, I'd like to add, too, I think a major triumph was to have so many parents involved in the process and so many parents affirming their children and their children's voice. And I think that's really, really a triumph, and affirming the work of the teachers, too.
Absolutely. Now, the other triumph I want to share, which also will lead to the next part of your question, the challenges, is our performance task assessments. One of our asks this year was for every single teacher to have a minimum of 2 performance task assessments. Maybe one first semester, one second semester, but at least 2. And the goal was, and even though we gave them professional learning and we gave them documents on the guidelines of a performance task, what should be and should be in a PTA, the goal was just do it, right? Just get it done, right? Because the challenge this year is there were some performance task assessments that were fantastic. They were incredibly engaging. They were aligned to, I'm pointing like the screen, they were aligned to our CPSF circles, right? You saw aspects where students' voice were being elevated. It was connected to their own passions and own interests. You saw the skills coming out in the instruction where students were growing in their collaborative skills and their critical thinking skills and their ability to think out of the box and be creative, as an example. And you also saw it connected to content, right? The standards and the things that we would be expected to do otherwise. So a lot to celebrate in the work that was done with our PTAs. But likewise, there's a lot of work to do to grow and improve upon our PTAs, right? Connected to applied learning, right? We really want to say, like Ms. Smith just said, all the content is here now, right? How do we teach our students to apply it and use it? And that's part of what a PTA, which is a performance task, asks our students to do, to apply their learning. So that's also a growth area for us as well.
Yeah, so I just want to make it clear, the PTAs are really, really important, because that's for all teachers throughout all content, all 6 years, right? At least twice a year. The capstone is 8th and 12th grade. And the students are selecting their best PTAs over the course of 2 years or 4 years. So that's why the PTAs are so important, because that forms the grounding for the capstone.
Absolutely. Right. And the goal, I mean, just to do simple math, if a student, for example, is in high school and they're getting a minimum of 2 PTAs a year per class, and they have 6 classes, well, that's 12 performance task assessments they're getting their freshman year. And that's another 12 their sophomore year. By the time they're a senior, they will have had 48 at a minimum performance task. If they started with us in junior high, add now 7 times 2 for 2 years. So you can see by the time they leave us, the skills that we're trying to really integrate and make sure education works for them, plus their voice and passion and purpose, they're going to leave with agency. They're going to leave knowing who they are, how they fit, and how they can create a better world through the Unlimited U. So that's the goal. And the tension is these PTAs, although there may be only 2 a year, how are these performance tasks and the lesson design connected to that, improving instruction each and every day? So it's not just these PTAs, it's all the things they're getting in between.
So I want to make another thing clear too. The performance tasks are the gateway into the community in terms of applied problem solving, from food deserts to mental health to issues of branding regarding Anaheim High School. That was a performance task, and students were bringing that, teachers were bringing that into the classroom. So where students were engaging on these really controversial issues and forming their own opinions and views based on the research. So that's really an important thing, right? Because over time, you're going to have more and more students aware of these issues, connecting the dots, and holding us accountable, whatever their issue is. So that's what we're trying to do, is build a new way of applied learning and problem solving.
So does that answer your question, challenges and triumphs? Yeah. We still have work to do for sure, but we're proud of where we began.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. On the California school dashboard, there were 2 areas. There were the 6 state indicators and the 505 local indicators. Well, state indicators are obviously that's statewide.
State priorities.
How are the 5 local indicators chosen? Is that the same for every, or do we decide that? Or
those are consistent across districts, but then we have to localize it to like our district and our needs.
Okay.
So yeah, the implementation of state standards is an example. Every school district across the state is expected to talk and reflect on how they're implementing state standards as a local indicator.
Got it. Thank you. Going back to our goal number 1, if I'm reading correctly, it says the A through G completion, the desired outcome is lower than past. Why are we looking at lower standards?
I want to make sure.
It's on page 23 of this book I'm looking at. it says the district goal is 55%, and the year 2 outcome was 55.9, so we dropped 0.9% as our goal. I would think we'd be wanting to increase our A through G completion rate.
Isn't that a goal? Isn't that the outcome?
I'm trying to
Desire.
understand this.
Okay, page 23, you said?
Yeah, page 23.
Wasn't that the outcome and not the goal?
So we met the
Well, it says
goal.
desired outcome for 23-24, district is 55% for AG completion rate.
So we
okay.
met the goal.
And then it says in year 2, it says the desired outcome was 55.9%. So am I
see.
interpreting it correctly? It's showing that we're desiring a lesser outcome than previous year?
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Are you looking at, like, I'm looking at baseline 52.8 and then 52?
There. I'm looking right here, page 23, right there. A through G completion rate, measuring and reporting results.
So what I believe, and Dr. Hernandez, correct me wrong, even Mr. Carmona, the LCAP is a 3-year process. And when we began in year 1, we're in year 2 right now. When we began in year 1, we set a goal, and it appears, right, we've accomplished our goal in year 2.
Oh, okay.
But we still have year 3. So the goal in year 3 is for us to actually do better than now we did in year 2. But when we set the goal in 2020, it was with the goal of going to 55% when we were at 52.8.
We surpassed.
So we've already
Okay.
surpassed our desired outcome. And so next year, our goal would be to surpass what we did this year. And then the following year, we begin a new 3-year cycle with our LCAP.
Okay, so it's not a rolling cycle. Every year, we're adding a year, you're adding a year. When
Yeah.
you get through the 3, then you start another 3.
We start another 3 cycle, yeah.
Okay.
So in other words,
Right.
okay.
How come?
So these goals, in other words, the desired outcome, it was established 3 years ago.
Yeah. This is year 2. So last year, we created the goals for the end of the 3rd year. So now we're in year 2 of our 3-year cycle. Next year, we'll be in the 3rd year of our cycle.
Okay.
And then the following year, we start the process all over again. It's done in 3 years, every 3 years.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So the 21 was established for, that was the year you established the goals.
Right.
And then, okay.
Yes.
So it's been a couple of years ago that was established.
Yes.
Right, okay.
So
Okay.
we did a good job. We actually
Yeah.
exceeded what we had.
Beating your estimate.
That I
Right.
can, okay, I got
Which is
that.
good.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you for this,
Yeah.
Paulina.
Let's see, I'm just looking at the, on page 27, which is student completing dual enrollment courses. Obviously, because of COVID, we dropped substantially. I'm looking at specifically the Fullerton College went from 888, 550 down to 411, have a goal of 1,000. How are we going to make that jump and try to achieve or get to our goal of 1,000? That's a heck of a jump from 411 up to 1,000. So what's the plan to be able to, in both not just Fullerton, but Cypress also?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up Ms. Bean because she works closely with our collaborative partners, especially at Fullerton College and Cypress College. But the pandemic absolutely had an impact. And the board may recall, we had way more success, I think, with Cypress College because there was a different mindset with a lot of the staff and the colleagues that we worked with at Cypress College, where there was a way more flexible mindset in working with high school students through a college course, whereas Fullerton College, there was a little bit more resistance that students aren't ready. So that impacted the number of opportunities that our students at Fullerton College got. You may recall, I think prior to the pandemic, we had students come during public comments to say, I have siblings on the west side who are working with Cypress, can we work with Cypress? Because they were being boxed out at some of our east side schools. So we've been putting a lot of attention on Fullerton, and they do have a new president who seems to be really aligned and in support, Dr. Levo, of making this shift. So that was part of the challenge too with Fullerton College, but I'm gonna have Ms. Bean talk a little bit more about the dual enrollment in our plans.
Okay.
So we've been really focusing on our embedded or during the school day dual enrollment. And so over the last couple of years, we've been adding coursework at each grade level. So each high school has gotten to choose. We have a couple of different models that we utilize, and each high school has gotten to choose the model that they feel is best for their campus. And I'm proud to say that we are now, every single one of our high schools has embedded dual enrollment, whereas from the data that you're looking at, we didn't have it in every high school with Fullerton College. And so, so that's one piece, and so we're continuing to grow that, and then we're continuing to grow our after-school opportunities, specifically around the CTE pathways and the extension of our own pathways. So we've added courses in drone piloting, we've added real estate course at Anaheim High School, and so on and so on. And then, like Dr. Freed mentioned, with the change in leadership at Fullerton College, a more significant investment is being made into dual enrollment. Whereas Cypress College has had their own dual enrollment team, Fullerton didn't have that, and now they're making that investment to have a team to support our students in enrollment and matriculation and staying in the courses and having success. And so we would expect that over the next couple of years, we'll really see those numbers grow and the success rate to be much higher.
So for a dual enrollment course, whatever that course is, are they both at both college? Will they be at both colleges? So could Anaheim High be taking dual enrollment either at Fullerton or Cypress? And is there choice or?
So the way that it works with the colleges is that they have areas that they service, and so
Okay.
within their rules, we have to service particular high schools with a particular college.
Okay.
But to expand on that, so like for example, Magnolia High School is a Cypress College school, but because of the MAC, we have horticulture that we're offering through Fullerton College because Cypress doesn't have it. So when one of the colleges doesn't have what we need, then they give permission for the other campus to service that specific class.
Glad to hear. Thank you.
Board President O'Neill, if I may, that I think is an important point to make, and I know I talked to Trustee Guerrero about this. I want to emphasize the importance of the integrated or embedded dual enrollment. When we talk about the local indicators and access, if you're an athlete or if you are part of a family where you have to go home after school and help support your younger siblings, or maybe you have to go get a job to support bringing food to the table at home, you can't access dual enrollment if it's only after school. I'm sad to say where my son goes to school in his district, he's an athlete and he has not been able to access dual enrollment. So I have to have him take dual enrollment opportunities in the summer when he should be off. But he doesn't get that opportunity because they don't serve their athletes or their students who have those other situations. So I'm really proud that we do it during the school day. And yes, sometimes we receive pushback from colleagues or teachers because they feel like, well, now they're not taking my AP course. But the reality is there's significant research when students take dual enrollment courses and the impact on them pursuing higher education because they're taught by a university level professor. Not that our AP teachers, they're amazing, but the students still sometimes see them as a high school teacher. They're taught by university or college level professors. And that is a significant impact to our students. So that access, I want to stress how important that is, that we have students who can do their sports or help their families and still have access to a dual enrollment course. Where in other districts, you don't see that. It's an after school program.
That's good. I'm glad. Kudos to our district for that. Question back on the Lcap education partner engagement piece. The students, parents, staff, community members, the numbers that we have is 553. How does that compare to last year?
So overall, I think we were high. I think it was, well, there were differences in groups, I think, but I think overall
the student numbers are up, the parent numbers are a little down.
The parent numbers were down a little.
Yeah, do we know why the parent?
Staff was way up.
Do we know why the parent, it caught me that it was kind of low.
Yeah.
It could be various reasons. I know coming back from a pandemic, many of our parents are re-entering the workforce, but also we have done a good job at live streaming our LCAP process. Our ambassadors once again did an amazing job with the highlights. So we're offering this process where they can participate or engage and see and keep informed virtually, but there could be many factors. But we do hope to continue to increase our parent engagement in person.
Okay, thank you.
When we had our own reflection as an ed staff, that was one of the areas that we talked about is we needed to, we don't necessarily know all the reasons as to why it went down, but we know we need to do a better job of that outreach and making sure that we have more parents participate in our process because their voice matters. And that's central to our community school approach, that we want to be part of our decision-making body.
Okay.
I just have to make a comment. I know our numbers are significantly higher than other districts overall.
Right.
But still, our standards, right?
Yes.
And I do have a question here, but I wanted to wait until the others were. But when when Roxana talked about the focus groups and the priorities, one of my questions was priority one, it wants lower class sizes. Now, this is problematic, okay, but this is the priority. Are we doing this in the special ed classes? Are we, because this is something that was a contractual thing we had, but then that ended. So when they're wanting this, I thought, are we doing it in special ed, special needs classes, or, if that's one area we can do it in at least?
So I know Amy Maya is here, but one of the things that we've been moving towards is the special academic instruction, or SAI model, and as a result, our district has actually hired more special ed teachers to help reduce the class size. So when our students with disabilities are being mainstreamed in gen ed classes, the numbers are lower.
They are lower.
That's, of course, the target and the goal, and that's what we've added. I think it was 10 to 15 teachers when I spoke with
Well, I
Mr.
know
Jensen.
we have increased a large number of special ed, and that's why I'm asking, because overall, we didn't lower it again this year, but we have hired a lot more teachers and retained a lot of our teachers.
And remember, too, there is a correlation between embedded dual enrollment courses and, and affecting class size, right? Because if you bring those college professors in, then that's going to lower class. It's like ROP.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
Right. No. And then, of course, the counselors and such, and I know we've increased those, so that's all good. I had one other question about the full-time mathematics curriculum specialist. In other words, when did we hire that full-time?
So math, we had Julie Spikerman, so I don't know when she began. It was before I was in the ed division.
When we hired the full-time.
It says one of the, okay, I don't know what page
So-
I saw it on here.
Now it's Katie Childers, but
Pardon?
it's Katie Childers now, but previously it was Julie Spikerman.
Okay, but we had a curriculum math specialist, but it said we were going to hire a full-time math curriculum specialist.
Julie was full.
It's always
This
been
new
full-time.
one this year.
Early biology.
Katie's new,
Way back.
but the position's not new.
it's
No, the position's not new, but it was from within.
Yeah, but it was always full-time.
So this said we're hiring, huh?
We've had a math specialist for probably 2 decades.
Oh, I know, but what I'm saying is that it mentioned a new full-time math specialist.
Oh, thank you. So that's right, thank you. So as you may recall, when Julie first retired, we didn't have someone who was interested in the position. So you may recall when Amy was overseeing the math as a director, at that time she was a coordinator, we didn't have the curriculum specialist. Amy did that as a coordinator / curriculum specialist to support our math folks. And then the following year, we were able to build capacity and get a math teacher to be interested, and that was Katie.
Okay.
So that year of that gap year was when Amy served in that role
okay.
as a coordinator.
So it's a technical.
Okay, because here it is. It says a full-time mathematics curriculum specialist was hired at the start of 22-23 year to focus solely on improving mathematics instruction.
That's Katie this year.
Okay, and that's Katie.
Katie Childers. She was a
Childers?
math teacher at Loera High School.
Okay.
Outstanding math teacher.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, and, okay, we have all these different pathways. Now, does every one of our high schools have a pathway now?
Yes, they all have an exclusive pathway, and they have additional pathways as well.
Okay,
Exclusive is the one that's most complete in terms of the course sequence. It may be exclusive because it's the only one in our district. Like, there's only one artificial intelligence pathway, so
Right.
that's exclusive. And it's also the most comprehensive in terms of the dual enrollment offerings and other things to really build it out. So it's a really comprehensive pathway, looking at all different aspects of educating our child
okay.
or children in that area.
Because right now, I don't know, which one is the visual and performing arts? Who has that as their major pathway?
So all of our schools have visual and performing arts pathways.
Right.
So as you may recall, Loera High School and Ball initially began their pathway program as a visual and performing arts pathway.
Okay.
The hard part, especially in lieu of the declining enrollment era that we're in, every school has band and choir and drama programs. So
Yeah.
they weren't, like, if I wanted to be an artificial intelligence pathway, I know I'm going to put in to go to Kennedy. But I'm not going to put in to go to Loera if they have a band program, because I can go to Savannah or
Okay, well,
Cypress.
this was what I was, yeah.
But you may recall, there was a charter school that was trying to encroach on the Ball Loera area that was focused on visual and performing arts.
Uh-huh.
So strategically, we had that pathway there, so kids knew that they could stay there for that pathway, because their VAPA programs at those schools are very strong. But they have now shifted where the exclusive pathway at Loera is now the droning pathway, the drones. So
Right.
all of our schools have visual and performing arts pathways.
Okay, well, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. I said, I didn't think there was any one, just one. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is just
Correct.
some of our areas that's not just one at each high school, so.
Correct.
And like law and justice, that, that's at a couple different
Yeah,
schools.
correct.
Okay. All right, that was one of my questions. And then, okay, the other ones I answered. Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
This is a lot of work, and I want to say thank you to those who worked on it.
So, moving on, 6.2, we open a public hearing, local control and accountability plan and annual update. Anybody wishing to speak on this subject? Nope, seeing none, we close the public hearing. 6.3, public hearing, 2023-24 proposed budget. We open a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak? We close the public hearing.
Dr. Nian has a presentation.
Yeah, she has a present, 6.2 is a presentation here, so.
Oh, okay, sorry, wait a minute. So back on 6.2 now?
6.3.
6.3, sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's okay.
Well, it's kind of like
All right,
public hearing.
we can reopen the public hearing after.
They
Okay.
kind of
Thank you.
went out.
Okay.
They didn't put it under presentations.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paulina. Appreciate it. Well, good evening, Board President O'Neill, members of the board, Superintendent Masuda, Cabinet, members of the public, and those joining us online. Tonight, I'll be presenting on the proposed adopted budget for 23-24. I would first like to thank Karen Org, Joe Kimona, as well as Dr. Roxana Hernandez for your hard work on supporting to put this budget together. It's a lot of late nights and weekends, and so thank you so much for all your hard work. Really appreciate that. I want to give an overview on, okay, there we go. I want to give you an overview on what's happening with the overall economy. So as we all kind of know, there's continued to be a slowdown, and there are a lot of uncertainties at this point, right, in the overall economy. The latest number for the inflation as of April 2023 was at 4.9%. So this is actually good from the high of 9.1% back in June of 2022, which was the highest in the last 40 years at last year.
So here.
And so,
That's why they got it. There you go.
and our governor has really tried to balance the existing investments, which is our base funding of the LCFF, while the revenue has really have a significant deficit, projected deficit of $31.5 billion shortfall that's being projected at this point. However, protecting the LCFF funding does come at an expense of currently at one-time funds reduction being proposed at the May revise. So this is something very concerning for us at this point. And the governor did warn as well in May that should there be additional economic risk to the budget, that deeper reductions could be necessary. So do you want to make sure that we know those? And in this presentation, I'm going to be highlighting three themes. The first is going to be reduction to one-time funds. And second will be declining enrollment, which we've been talking about that's across the state. And then finally, the declining in attendance rate, which is now the new star of the budget at this point for many of the school districts. The first area I want to talk about is the reduction to one-time dollars. And this is the Arts and Music and Instructional Material Discretionary Block Grant. When the budget was passed back in early in 22-23, our initial allocation was $17 million for our district. And then by January, this reduction was proposed to $11 million. And then the latest May revise, it's being proposed to further reduction to $8.7 million. And so the issue is this: we have already This money was supposed to be in already. We receive 50% of it already at this point. So this would mean that if this this funding does get reduced, then we will only be keeping the 50% and then not receiving the other 50%. So this is extremely concerning, as obviously we have lost about $8.7 million through this process. The next proposed reduction is the reduction to the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. And so as of this time, our initial allocation was at $47.7 million at this point. We have received the entirety of this dollar amount already. It's already in our account at the county, so the money is already here. And so the proposal to reduce this is to reduce at about 32% to $32 million for our district. So this is an extremely significant loss to our district. And unfortunately, we already have received this money. So if there is a reduction, what the state could do is to count it towards our principal apportionment from the LCFF base funding. So if that were to happen, then we will then do some accounting to make sure that this happens. But it is extremely unfortunate that money's been received and now is the reduction coming through. And I've been in this industry for about 20 plus years at this point. I'm not really seeing something like this. It's like you get some, cuts, but this is the money already in the bank. And so that is very concerning for us at this point. I do want to talk about Prop 28. So this is something that the voter passed back in November of 22, and the money is will be starting in 2023. Our estimate currently is about $4.7 million. And expenditure plan is actually required for each school site. We did not budget this amount currently for our 23-24 budget because there is no accounting code relating to this that we are not able to budget in our system currently. And so we check with the county and the people we know, and so they said currently there is a budget, a projected amount. Unfortunately, there's no accounting code that we could put it into our system at this point. So just want to make sure that we are aware of that. And when they release the accounting code, then we will be bringing that revenue into our budget.
When do you anticipate that?
We have been waiting. We have not heard. We thought by now we would have already had it, but it's not nowhere in the code structure that we have seen. So we could not budget this amount at this point. So they have already loaded on the website about what you can ask, and we've been checking on it, and the county has been checking on it, and so that's what they said. There's no accounting code, we can't really budget that amount. It's not just we find, the state will tell us which accounting number you have to put in, so we have to follow the state guidelines. So I do want to the second theme is the declining enrollment, and this chart here shows us the top 10 projected decline by county in California. And so as you can see, statewide averaging trending is between 2022-23 to 2031-32 in about a 10-year span or so. It's about 8.27% statewide. But you can see some of the counties are projecting, for example, Ventura County, 17% drop, right? That was a long time, but still, that's a significant drop. Orange County did not make it to top 10. But Orange County drop is still at 9.55 projection. And so obviously, that's something that we continue to track. You can see here, overall 12 counties across the state are projected to lose more than 10,000 students between 22 to 23, including our county. And 18 counties will lose more students faster rate than the averaging of 8.27%, and Orange County is one of them. So we do want to make sure that something that we continually to track our enrollment is a statewide phenomenon at this point. I think this will show you that this is a phenomenon across the state. And certain counties obviously is a lot worse. But we are like within the top 12 or something, when it's still very, very significant, and we continue to track this enrollment. Yeah, we've been talking about declining enrollment for a long time now. It's like more than 10 years we've been declining, right? So this is the number that we have been targeting. But now the new star of the show is actually attendance rate. And so this will show you what the state averaging has been. And so if you look at prior to the pandemic, right, districts were about 96% or so, right, and 95 to 96%. And our data has been between 95 to 96% as well. So, and then we get funded on the P2, which is the last two column there. But I just wanted to actually let the board know that our district, consider we're a secondary school district, for us to have such high numbers is very, very impressive. Because most of these data also include the elementary school district and the unified school district. And the attendance rates tend to be higher for the younger group of children. And if you look at the data, 21-22 data, at P1 across the state level was 91%. Our district, we were much higher, 93%. By P2, how we were funded, state level was 90.49%. Our district, we were at 95.16%. That is almost it's a 4.66% higher than statewide. So we really applaud for our staff for working really hard. That was our first year coming back from the pandemic. Our kids came to school despite everything else that was happening, and our number really, really showed that. So at the state level, they have been dropping since 21-22. It didn't hit us until this fiscal year in 22-23. Remember, I shared that information since January. We saw those numbers, we were tracking them. We were basically declining about 1% a month, and thank you, Dr. Jeremy Freed, for leading that task force to address the chronic absenteeism that we have. And we have now stabilized at this point. But the key point is this: at the state level, there has been a 4 to 5% drop across school districts. And so we have been working on that now. I know we continue to work on that. There's committees at school site level to really address this. But this problem didn't hit us until this year compared to all the other school districts. And for us to continue to have the rate that is a little bit above the state average, I think that is amazing, consider that we are a secondary school district at this point. And so I think this is something that we continue to track and working with our sites to make sure that we need to be bringing those numbers up. And this is something that now has becoming something that across the state, people are working on this and figuring out what can we do to improve this attendance rate at this point. So I want to show you like the effect of what the difference between enrollment versus ADA, because we get paid based on the average day attendance when they show up. So when our rates drop from 95% to 91%, that's a huge difference. And so this chart here, you will see how we get funded. So in 22-23, we also look at how much the base funding, and then what our current ADA, the ADA number is what the current ADA, and then versus the funded ADA. So in 22-23, our base funding is about almost $301 million. In 23-24, you can see our numbers drop as well at this point, but our increase is about $314 million. So a net of increase of about $13 million, or actually 4.36%. And as I'll show you on our multi-year projection, the COLA at the state level, the cost of living increase, is actually 8.22. So when we tell people, oh, we are getting the 8.22 increase, however, with our declining enrollment and our declining ADA, because of the attendance rate, the increase is actually only 4.36%. So I want to make sure that we know that. And there are other things, for example, that we do pay for, the step and collar increase, right? People, if they get more education, then they get a little bit more money. And each year when people are here, especially on the teacher side, you do get the increase in your step increase. There's also the health benefits increase as well that we have seen. And but you know, our increases are much better than some of the other surrounding districts. We have an amazing health benefits committee, which our 2 board members do serve on that committee, really working hard to make sure that we get the best plans for our employees as well. And so really do think that committee to working hard on that. But unfortunately, with everything going up, there's also the cost of going up with the health benefits as well.
Nancy, can you give us the percent approximately of the servicing existing salary schedules?
Yes, absolutely. So for example, for step and column, we budget about 1.5% to that. So if you think about that, of our total salary schedule, that's about a $4 million increase, you know, each year that would go on just for the step and column. The health benefits increase, we been budgeting about 10%, and that's the industry standard to budget between at least 10% and maybe up to 12%, depending on what's happening in that year. And the health benefits increase would be about $6 million a year. And then recently, we have also increased the property and liability insurance, as well as workman's comp insurance as well, and those are going up about $1 million each year at this point, so with an increase of $2 million. So there are already a lot of increases that we already have to absorb as part of our budget, and so I just want to make sure that, to show this, to see what we're actually getting in terms of dollar amounts.
So those percentages actually come off and lower the 4.36%.
Definitely.
By maybe another 1.5% to 2%?
Oh, for sure. So total, for example, for each year is about currently between $10 to $12 million increase. So pretty much, if you look at how much being absorbed, bulk of it is already we have to use that money to feed these increases already at this point.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a new chart I wanted to present, is the enrollment projection with our actual ADA. This is the ADA we're funded. Not, this is the actual ADA that we are actually generating, not the funded ADA, because we are projected for about 3 years based on the new current model. And as well as the unduplicated people count, which includes our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, English language learner, as well as foster youth. As you will see here, we are projecting to continue to decline, and currently, next year, the number is going down to about 27,000 students, and we are projecting to decline to about a little bit under 24,000 in 26, 27 at that point. And as you can see, the actual projected ADA currently is at the 91% attendance rate. Obviously, we're hopeful that we can increase that rate as we go through, and making since now we do know the problem, we had a delay effect from compared to other school districts, but that even 1 year of not falling to the 91% is helping us with our overall budget at this point. So we are very hopeful that we can continue to work on that. This is the financial projection dartboard the assumptions we are using. As you can see, the COLA for next year, the cost of living adjustment, is at 8.22%. So this is an increase from the initial projection that we received of 8.13. So then we are putting the 8.22 into our budget at this point. As you can see, the CalSTRS employer rate is now at 19.1%. So that means for every dollar that we pay employees, the district has to pay 19.2 cents. So just think about that. So that's something. And the employees also have to pay their employee contributions as well. So that we have that. Unemployment insurance, it's good. It's actually going from 0.5% to 0.05. But just remember, not that long ago, it was only 0.05%. So we did have an increase quite a bit, and then it's now coming down. So for the proposed adopted budget for general fund in 23-24, our total revenue is showing here $566 million. And you can see the bulk of our money now is, and has been, is from the local control funding formula, LCF, and funding there at about 74%. For the total expenditures, we are projected to be about $566 million for this coming fiscal year at this point. And you can see here, this is the multi-year projection that you see here. So for the proposed adopted budget, we are taking in $566.8 million, and then total expenditures about $566 million. So net is about, we do have a positive balance in that year of $431,000. But if you're looking at the out years, we are now projected to deficit spend starting next year, $9.8 million, $13.7 million, and $28.5 million. We do have with the new reserve level, our current year reserve level will be at 9.78%, drop, and then staying about 9.86 the following year, and then going down to 7%, and then in the fourth year out at 5.11%.
Getting close.
So what are some of the final thoughts? So as you all know, the tax extensions for the disaster areas in California, which are going to be bulk of the counties across the state, with the tax extension until October 16th. There is really tough to actually get the budget to see what the true numbers will be, and we're looking at possibly November. That's what they're telling us, that the state would have better number at that point. So I'm sure that the state level was on budget prior to their timeline, but we must be looking at what happens when the tax revenue do come back around October, and then with the information for November at that time. And so we'll be really watching for that. I think around Thanksgiving, that's the time we think that they'll be releasing all those numbers. So we will be cautious waiting to see what those numbers look like at that level. And so the governor will be adopting the state budget spending plan by June 15th, and so we'll be going to the board at the same night as well. So we'll hopefully be hearing some of the things that will be coming out between this week and next week to see what are some of the one-time things that the cuts, hopefully they do not come. There are other things that the governor can do, which we do welcome, but not that will be better than having the one-time reduction. For example, some years ago, you guys remember, we had a lot of deferrals, but deferrals is better than getting those reductions that we are seeing those at this point. So there's different things we can do with deferrals, and maybe that the state can dip into the rainy day fund if they do need. There is a rainy day fund at that point that they can possibly start doing that. But what they're doing right now is cutting the money they already have given to us, and a lot of the money is already in the bank. That is really tough to operate the way we're doing, and obviously we want to continue to monitor what's going on, but we are hopeful and really try to make sure that the one-time cuts do not continue to come, because the possibility is if there is continued decline in the overall economy, they could possibly take in even more. And so that's something that we are extremely concerned at this point. And so once we do get the state adoption of the budget, and we'll be bringing to the board a 45-day update, I do want to caution that at that point, I don't think the revenue picture is very clear, and so really waiting until probably November will give us the best numbers at that point. And then this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions?
I just had one clarifying question on the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Since the money's been already allocated, you said since we already have the money, it would come out of which funds?
So what they would do is, instead of giving us the LCFF base funding, so you saw that the base funding there, right? So what they can do is, let's say, if they cut that, they can say, take your money and basically count towards your base. So we may have to move the money into a different pot. But accounting will be interesting, but I'm sure we'll figure out how to do that when that happens.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No worries.
Anybody else? Yes.
Nancy, how do we know on the planning factors that CalSTRS is staying the same and then CalPERS is going up?
So with CalSTRS, there are boards that they set these rates, and so so far there is a statute that with CalSTRS they cannot change that. But CalPERS is a little different. CalPERS the board can set those rates, but not the CalSTRS. So it would take quite a bit to make that change. And so do you remember CalPERS and even CalSTRS rate, it was at 8.25%. With CalSTRS, it wasn't even that long ago. And with CalPERS, it was at 13.02%. And seeing that literally double at this point, and it was very quick increase. And so that's something that all employers are looking at to see what we can compensate, because with those increases, that is a very big factor as well. But at this point, the numbers are stabilizing. But it's still, when you look at back, not even that many years ago, the number were much lower. I mean, it was basically less than half. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Thank you for your very concise explanation. It's very graphic, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, 5-0. Advanced planning, we see our next board meeting is going to be on June 15th. Seems kind of, maybe next week, huh?
Next week?
See you here.
We'll be back
Week from
again.
today.
All right. So, any suggested agenda items? Hearing none, do I have a motion for number 9, adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Oh, darn. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Good night.
This is the smallest you'll ever see for a board meeting.
Boy, there are a lot